we're here for the what, when, why, and how of Gnarly Nutrition's newest products with our very own Dr. Shannon O Grady. My name is Eli Kerr. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Gnarly Nutrition. Super excited to get to introduce this clinic. And you know, like in a lot of ways, I've seen this presentation, and I get still excited to see it again and again. So Shannon's especially excited that you know, I'm doing the introduction because she loves my dad jokes. For those of you, you know, I would make the assumption that most of you know who Gnarly Nutrition is, and that's why you're here and you want to learn about our new products. For those of you who are new to Gnarly Nutrition, you know, we offer a full line of all natural NSF certified for sports products. We design nutrition for athletes who pay attention and care, you know, what kind of products go on inside their bodies. We pride ourselves in offering clean, honest nutrition, and we think it tastes pretty amazing. I think most people, if you were to look at our reviews, kind of think so as well. And we ask, you know, people who don't like the taste of our products to just be quiet. No, we actually don't. We really pride ourselves actually on feedback loop and try to you know, make delicious products. It is a hard thing to do, but we think we've done a pretty damn good job. Really excited for the clinics that that are forthcoming. We've been doing a number of these clinics over the last month-ish and have had a really good reception. People have loved the content that the experts we've brought in has been providing, and we hope to do many more of these kinds of things. As we've collected these clinics and the topics specifically that we're covering and have covered, we've been really focused on, you know, helping athletes prevent injuries, deal with injuries, provide recovery tips, you know, help them establish and maintain baseline health and nutrition knowledge. A lot of the clinic that Shannon's going to be covering today is focused on that specific topic. And we've put all these topics together and called it, you know, longevity in sport. This idea of how do we spend more days doing the things we love and less days sidelined or sitting on the couch watching Netflix. So we hope that this information is valuable to everyone. And a couple of the really cool things is you have the opportunity at the end of this clinic to provide some feedback for Shannon, some feedback for Gnarly through a little survey. And we hope that you'll take that opportunity to just take a couple minutes and give us that feedback. During these clinics as well, we've launched one of our newest products, which is Gnarly Collagen Pro. Shannon's going to be diving into that pretty deeply today, so I won't really introduce that too much. And really just ask that if you do love something that you learned today through Shannon, which, you know, every time I hear her present, I learn something new. If you learned something new today, we'd love for you to, you know, take a picture, a screenshot, something, and post it on the socials, tag Shannon, and also tag Gnarly Nutrition. We want to make sure that other people know that we're providing these great clinics, and you know, we'd love your help to recommend them to come and check out the other clinics we have going on. The other thing too that I want to make sure that everyone knows is we have a pretty rad giveaway going on right now. And that giveaway would allow you to win some of our new products that Shannon's going to be covering today, along with a bunch of really cool products from other brands that we've partnered with. And it's, you know, we're giving about $3,000 worth of product away and to 3 different like grand prize winners. So pretty cool. You can check that out by visiting our site, and there's a direct link. It's pretty obvious where to go from there. So with that said, I will give a quick intro to Shannon and to this clinic. I guess I would also just mention that we have the opportunity for you to submit questions, and Shannon will answer those. And I think that this session is a really, really good one to ask questions and really take the opportunity to ask those questions from Shannon specifically. And so there's a little button down at the bottom that says Q&A. Please submit all your questions through there, and we'll make sure that we get them answered. Again, for those of you who are just getting in, this is the what, when, why, and how of Gnarly Nutrition's newest products with Dr. Shannon O Grady. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Gnarly's newest products, Gnarly Collagen Pro and Gnarly Baseline series. Excited to introduce the Baseline series, and Shannon will obviously discuss a lot more about that. She'll be discussing the science behind these new products, as well as discussing, who may benefit from them and how they should be integrated into a daily nutrition plan. Shannon has her Ph.D. in nutritional physiology from the University of Utah. She's the chief operating/product officer here at Gnarly Nutrition, a Salt Lake-based sports nutrition supplement company whose focus is to create clean, natural, and effective supplements for active individuals. She's a mother of two, a competitive athlete herself. Shannon is continuously looking for the crossroads between training and nutrition for insights and on improving performance and reducing injury and increasing longevity. So today's topic is super perfect for that crossroads that Shannon really loves to discuss. And I would say from the competitive athlete side, I've had the opportunity to roll around with Shannon. She loves jujitsu and have gotten the opportunity to be choked out by her a couple of times. So she's definitely one that you don't want to mess with when it comes to jujitsu or discussing nutrition. So it's better just to listen and learn. Shannon, it's all you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Eli. There's not too many jobs where you get to choke out your boss. So, I mean, it's been a high point.
I'm going to fade into the background.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Eli also mentioned, the Q&A box. I just want to take a minute to distinguish between the chat box and the Q&A. If you guys kind of have comments along the way or want to kind of pose a question or talk about something with the community, chat box is the best place to do it. The Q&A box is a great place to really pose questions that you want me to answer, and kind of keeping them separate just really helps make sure that I get to all those questions. Okay, so let's dive into it. So Eli already kind of announced the title of my talk, but really why I'm here is to tell you a little bit about the product Gnarly Collagen Pro, which we just launched, as well as the Gnarly Baseline series, which we'll be launching in January and are really excited about. So I'm going to start with Gnarly Collagen Pro. I'm going to go through some basics of collagen. I'm going to spend some time talking about the science and how that informs us about use. And then I'm going to talk specifically about Gnarly Collagen Pro and what you can expect. So collagen is the most abundant structural protein in the body. It builds structure and strength in musculoskeletal tissues, which are tissues like tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and bone. So really important in the joints that we use as athletes. One thing to know is that collagen synthesis degrades with age. And so we have to think about kind of the loads we're putting on these joints, but also as we age as athletes, the impact that increased load may have in the presence of kind of declining collagen in the body. So before we get into kind of the science of it, I always like to give some background so you can kind of understand what the science means. And to start, I want to talk about kind of the primary structure of proteins. So proteins can get really complex with their structures, and that really informs kind of the use of protein in the body. But at its most basic level, protein structure is all about amino acid sequence. So it's simply kind of the sequence of amino acids that make up a protein. And that sequence of amino acids can really tell us a lot about the quality of protein, or what the protein is going to be good at doing in the body. So there are two main groups of amino acids. If you've ever attended any of my other talks, you'll hear me talk about this a lot, particularly related to protein quality, where it informs us on, recovery and whether protein would be good for our muscles. So the two main groups are the essential amino acids and the non-essential amino acids. So an easy way to remember the difference between these is that it's essential that we get essential amino acids from our diet. And this is because we can't synthesize these amino acids in our body. And kind of the most famous of the essential amino acids are the branch chain amino acids, which have the little star next to them: isoleucine, leucine, and valine. And of these three, most research has been done on leucine as kind of the amino acid that really turns on muscle protein synthesis, which is important for muscle repair and also the building of new muscle. So in contrast, the non-essential amino acids are amino acids that we can synthesize in the body. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't look for these amino acids in proteins we get in our diet. It just means that we are able to synthesize them from other amino acids. So I've highlighted three of these non-essential amino acids: glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. And that's because these three amino acids are found in high prevalence in collagen. In contrast, we don't see high levels of leucine or the other branch chain amino acids. And this informs us a little bit about use, which I'll get to in a minute. So one of the cool things about collagen and its amino acid sequence is that you see kind of these repeating triplets of amino acids, which kind of start with that glycine and then have X and Y positions, which can be a number of amino acids, but are usually or often proline and hydroxyproline. For this reason, you see a lot of similarity in the amino acid sequence across collagen types, which is what we'll talk about a little bit later. But so basically you have this, single strand of amino acids that is then turned into a helix, and then three of these strands make a triple helix, which gives kind of collagen it's the structure that it's known for. So often in supplements, we hear hydrolyzed collagen or collagen peptides. And I just kind of want to explain what this means on this slide. It's really taking this triple helix, breaking it down, and then cutting it with enzymes into smaller groupings of amino acids, which are usually groupings of 2 or 3. So, I just told you a little bit about collagen and its amino acid structure and what amino acids are prevalent in collagen. And so I wanted to pose this question because I often see people using collagen maybe not at the appropriate times and not for the appropriate reasons. So based on what I told you, you can put this in the chat. Do you guys think that collagen protein is a good recovery protein? Why or why not? And specifically, I'm going to go ahead and answer my own question because I can't really see if you're answering, but collagen is not a great recovery protein because it's not high in leucine, which is necessary for basically turning on muscle protein synthesis. And it's not high in essential amino acids, at least relative to other proteins. And those essential amino acids really serve as the building blocks that build muscle. So leucine is kind of like the light switch, and those essential amino acids are the electricity that really gives us the light in the light bulb. And collagen lacks both of those things. So collagen is not really something you should be taking to recover from exercise that you're doing or to build new muscle and functionally adapt to the exercise that you're doing. Okay, so let's get down to why we're really here and what collagen can possibly do. So can collagen supplementation help repair and strengthen musculoskeletal tissue? So to remind you, those musculoskeletal tissues are things like tendons and ligaments and bone. So let's look at what the research currently out there shows. So the first thing, we want to know is if we're taking the supplement, if we're taking gelatin or collagen peptides, do we see the amino acids or the peptides in these supplements taken up by our body? And research looking into animal models and basically labeling the amino acids in the collagen peptides has shown that these amino acids are then integrated in the collagen, or excuse me, in the cartilage and the skin of these animal models. So that shows us that the supplement that we're taking is getting integrated into those tissues by the body. So then, do we see an increased level of collagen synthesis after supplementation? So this is a pretty hard question to ask in kind of live human models. And we'll get to ways people have addressed it in humans in the next slide. But one of the kind of best ways to answer this question is using bioengineered ligaments. And essentially what they've done is they've taken cells or fibroblasts from an ACL that's been removed from an individual and put them, basically grown a ligament from the cell by putting it in a solution. And then they can test a number of things with this bioengineered ligament. They've looked at the impact of exercise, of different exercise protocols, of different exercise durations, and of even the impact of nutrients and hormones on collagen synthesis. And one of the exciting things relative to this talk that they've shown is that gelatin and collagen peptides, with the addition of vitamin C, increase collagen synthesis in these bioengineered ligaments. And they've shown this in a dose-dependent manner. So there's been a lot of discussion over whether or not the impact of collagen peptides above and beyond the impact of exercise can really increase collagen synthesis. And I think this study by Keith Barr, which I've shown here, through this dose-dependent impact of collagen has shown what that supplementation can do in addition to an exercise protocol. So they followed up with animal models to support this, and it's pretty clear that supplementation with either gelatin or collagen peptides can lead to increased collagen synthesis. So the next thing is then to take this research and show whether or not it's applicable in humans. So it's pretty hard to study things like tendons and ligaments in humans because a lot of these tissues are mostly extracellular matrix, and it's hard to measure a lot of these things. But what they are able to do through things like an MRI is show how something like supplementation with collagen peptides can increase cartilage thickness. And they've shown this in patients that have pretty severe osteoarthritis in their knees. So you can take that cartilage thickness and see that would be directly related to an increase in collagen synthesis in that joint. They've also looked at athletes with low levels of joint pain and seen that collagen supplementation reduce that joint pain after a period of time. So both studies that are promising in terms of the impact that collagen supplementation could have on patients that have chronic knee pain and athletes that have low levels of joint pain. And that's that second study. So we can take all of this to show that supplementing with collagen could lead to increased collagen synthesis, and they may then reduce the risk of injury and also speed recovery from injury. So both of these things, reducing the risk of injury and helping someone recover faster, are hard things to show in scientific studies. There have been some studies done with sample sizes of 1 or 2, where they've integrated collagen supplementation into specific exercise protocols with athletes recovering from something like an ACL repair. And they've shown these really fast recovery times, but it's really hard to point to simply the collagen supplementation and say that's the single thing that did it. But as kind of part of the equation, the research seems to support that it could definitely have a positive impact. So what doesn't the research currently show? So the research doesn't currently tell us if collagen or whey protein is better at stimulating collagen synthesis. So there's been some research showing that similar to collagen supplementation, whey protein supplementation in the presence of strength exercise can increase tendon size, which is translated to mean collagen synthesis. But we've never compared collagen to whey, like compared the two in a single study. And so supposedly that study is being done, and I've been kind of eagerly awaiting those results to see if there is a difference. What we do know is there have been studies where they've looked at differences in the amino acids in the body after consumption of whey or of collagen. And there are differences in the amino acids we see in one or the other. It's just whether or not that translates to a differential impact on collagen synthesis. So you'll hear some people, and I myself was one for a while, who are skeptics of collagen saying, well, whey protein could essentially do the same thing. I'd say at this point, there's a lot more research on collagen specifically, promoting a positive impact on collagen synthesis. And although we do have that one study in the case of whey, we really need to see the two compared to know if one is better than the other. Oops, not too far. So research also doesn't currently support specific types of collagen for specific benefits. So if you've been interested in collagen supplementation, you've probably seen different supplements promoting the type of collagen that they have in their products. And this poster is an example of that, where they've kind of highlighted type 2 collagen being really good for cartilage, and type 1 collagen being good for the skin and for tendons and ligaments. But the research out there doesn't necessarily show that one type is better than the rest. So I did want to spend a little bit of time showing that we do see different types of collagen in different musculoskeletal tissues. So mostly types 1 and 3 are found in tendons and ligaments. You do see some type 2 collagen in these tendons and ligaments at the bony insertion. And you do mostly see type 2 collagen in cartilage. An example would be articular cartilage of the knee. But the thing is that the research showing a specific benefit to a specific type of collagen you would be supplementing with isn't there. So the research that does say show type 2 collagen is great for knee osteoarthritis compares that type 2 collagen to a placebo or to taking nothing. Same thing with research specifically showing the positive impact of collagen peptides on collagen synthesis in a ligament. So I've only found 2 studies that actually compare types of collagen head to head. And one of those studies showed that there was no difference between type 1 or type 2 collagen in having a benefit for collagen synthesis. And the other study showed that there was no difference of type 1 or type 2 collagen with neither of them having a benefit. So not really conclusive in terms of one being better or the other over the other. So I'm not necessarily saying that this couldn't be true. I'm just saying that the research that is currently out there doesn't support these specific benefits, and that we really need to see these head-to-head studies to know that if you have knee pain, you should seek out a supplement that has type 2 collagen. And if you're looking to improve, ligament strength in your fingers because you're a climber, you should be looking for a type 1 collagen. Most of the research shows that any collagen supplementation will be beneficial. So let's talk a little bit about Gnarly Collagen Pro, and I can tell you what is in our product and you know, how it should be used. So we chose to use grass-fed bovine peptides, which are mostly types 1 and 3 collagen. We've included both vitamin C and zinc, both to improve collagen synthesis and for collagen protection. Our product is NSF certified for sport. So for those of you that aren't familiar, NSF is a third-party quality group that tests for label claims as well as contaminants like microbes, heavy metals, and pesticides. The certified for sport is a step above the regular content certified, meaning that the product is, every single lot of the product produced is tested for all of the banned substances on the World Anti-Doping Agency. We've made this product, it's our first unflavored product. And we really made it that way so you could add it into your favorite Gnarly pre-workout or whatever you choose to use as a pre-workout. And that's because the science really shows that Gnarly Collagen Pro should be taken in the 30 to 60 minutes before exercise. So why is this? So one, we've already established that collagen is not a great recovery protein. So post-exercise, you need to be taking something that's high in branched chain amino acids and high in essential amino acids so that you're getting that repair and muscle synthesis needed to optimize recovery. But why is it important to take Collagen Pro before exercise? This is because those musculoskeletal tissues that we've talked so much about don't generally get a lot of blood flow. So by taking them before exercise, and specifically before exercise of those joints you might be concerned about, you're using the increased blood flow during exercise to help transport all of those amino acids and peptides to the places that need them most. So I'm going to take a minute here because that is all I'm going to say on collagen. And then I was going to jump over to the Gnarly Baseline series. So if you guys have questions on collagen or things that you want to talk about, let's do it now so that we can touch base on all of those, and then we can talk about baseline after. So I'll go ahead and open.
Shannon, do you want me to help you with this, or you got it?
Yeah, if you could, Eli, that'd be awesome.
Cool. So far, just a couple questions have been submitted. Really basic questions. So if I have knee pain, is the Gnarly Collagen Pro for me?
Yeah, I mean,
kind of tough too.
Yeah, so there are a lot of there are a few studies. There are studies both in patients with osteoarthritis, so I don't necessarily know the nature of your knee pain, but there are a number of studies in patients with chronic osteoarthritis, and also in athletes that generally have what they call low-level joint pain. So it's not necessarily chronic and it's not arthritic, but it's there. And all of those studies have shown a reduction in that pain with collagen supplementation. So what I would say is that Collagen Pro could be helpful. I would go ahead and take the full dose of Collagen Pro. So most studies show that dose response that we talked about. So the low level of that dose was at 5 grams. The high level was at 15 grams. So there was definitely an increase in collagen synthesis at the 15 grams over the 5 grams. And that's what you find in one serving of Gnarly Collagen Pro. So I would be taking at least 10 grams, optimally 15 grams, and making sure that you're getting it in the hour before you're going to use your knee. So whatever your sport of choice is. And if you're in any kind of PT program before you would do that physical therapy regime.
Great. Trying to decide if I want to ask this question right now. I guess it's relevant. I love the Gnarly BCAs, but I'm reading that EAAs are a much better source to turn on protein synthesis. What's your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm not sure where you read that. So EAAs, essential amino acids, are really important for kind of building the muscle. Most of the research shows that leucine, which is an essential amino acid. So just to be clear, branched chain amino acids are a subcategory of essential amino acids. So that might be where the confusion is. But a lot of research, actually most of the research I've seen, shows that leucine is really the primary driver for stimulating muscle protein synthesis. And that's through a pathway called the mTOR pathway. And there's even been research in high altitude athletes and the elderly. So two interesting populations that, deal with muscle wasting for different reasons, showing that branched chain amino acid use and leucine supplementation specifically can make up for inadequate protein intake. So even without the essential amino acids, other essential amino acids there, they can make up for those lower levels of that lower level of protein intake and drive muscle protein synthesis to the point where muscle mass is being maintained. So I would say both are important. If we're talking about how they're used, we really recommend gnarly BCAAs being used before exercise, and that's less to really drive muscle protein synthesis and more to prevent muscle protein breakdown. And then after exercise, you want a whole protein that is high in both leucine and essential amino acids, because that leucine is going to turn on muscle protein synthesis. And those essential amino acids are what is going to help rebuild and that muscle that was broken down during exercise. So I hope that helps a little bit. But really leucine is the key, and BCAAs as a whole for turning on muscle protein synthesis.
Good. What are the pharmacokinetics and the bioavailability behind collagen supplementation that guide your 30 to 60 minute pre-workout recommendation?
Sure, pharmacokinetics. I don't think I'm going to get as specific as pharmacokinetics, but I will say a lot of it just has to do with digestion. So the 60 minutes is the amount of time for your body to break down. So I'll say this, collagen peptides, as I mentioned, have been enzymatically digested into smaller groups of amino acids. So it's not like you're taking in a whole protein, which takes about 2 to 3 hours to fully digest and then see those amino acids in your system. You're taking smaller pieces of that protein, and therefore it takes less time to digest those smaller pieces and see those amino acids in your system. So it's almost like a graded scale. Whole proteins, 2 to 3 hours for digestion. Collagen peptides, or peptides in general, if you're looking at any hydrolyzed protein, an hour. We're looking at free amino acids. Studies show that they're absorbed in 20 to 30 minutes. So the 60 minutes is enough time for you to digest those peptides and get those amino acids into your system so that that increased blood flow can actually pass them to the joints that need them. I hope that answered your question.
Dana, if there's additional questions or information on there, go ahead and submit another Q&A and we'll try again if we didn't quite get it all, okay? Last one for right now, and then we'll move on. If you have other questions about collagen, we can definitely take them later in the conversation still, but just wanted to take a moment to discuss them now. Is the recommended consumption time frame the same for BCAAs? I find I normally take the before and during my work. I normally take them before and during my workout. And then is the collagen effective to take during a quote unquote longer workout?
Yeah, great question. So I think I kind of just touched on that question at the end of my last answer. So BCAAs, ideally to have them in your system while you're exercising, which is the research shows that can help prevent excess muscle protein breakdown, which helps reduce delayed onset muscle soreness. which then impacts recovery. Ideally, you want them in your system. So 20 to 30 minutes is enough time for you to absorb those amino acids and realize that benefit. You can also take them during exercise. And as the person touched on, if the exercise is long enough, then you're going to realize that benefit towards the latter part of the exercise or the training that you're doing. So it really depends kind of on the nature of the training and how long it is. Collagen Pro, or collagen in general, collagen peptides, could be put into that same category. But I would say that ideally you would have them in your system while you're actually exercising. If you forget to take them 60 minutes beforehand and it only ends up being 20 minutes beforehand, still take them. You're still going to benefit from getting those amino acids to the areas of concern. But ideally you would put them in something and take them a full hour beforehand.
Okay, great, Shannon. That's all the questions for now.
Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Those are great questions. Okay, so let's see. Now I'm going to talk about Gnarly Baseline. So we have designed this series to really help fill in the nutritional gaps in what we're calling your baseline health. So you can think of baseline health as more than just nutrition. You can think of it as your emotional health, your mental health, you know, the amount of sleep you get. It can be, you know, so much more than what you're taking in as far as what you're eating, but obviously nutrition is also a big part of it. And without this baseline health, you don't really have the strong foundation needed to support optimal performance and recovery. So many of us are focused on the goals that we set for each other or ourselves in athletic endeavors, and what we need to take to fuel those goals, or what we need to take to recover optimally from those events, without thinking about what we need on a daily basis to really provide the foundation to even go after the goals. So that's what kind of the Gnarly Baseline series is about, is really helping athletes, active individuals, fill in any nutritional gaps that might be keeping them from going after those larger goals. So the first of the Gnarly Baseline series, and I'm going to go through background first, and then I'll talk about you know, the Gnarly product specifically, is vitamin D. So we've heard a lot about vitamin D, especially in this current environment, but I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going over background for those that might not have it. So vitamin D is interesting in that it's not just a vitamin, it's actually a hormone. And a hormone is actually a substance that's transported in our circulatory system and has impacts, you know, all over the body. And a lot of research has been done on vitamin D more recently, because vitamin D receptors have been found all over the body. And as more receptors are found, more studies are done to determine the impact that vitamin D can have in the body's different systems. So, and research has shown that vitamin D is integral to immune function, to protein synthesis, to muscle function, to cardiovascular function, our inflammatory response, cell growth, and musculoskeletal regulation. So vitamin D is found in a few foods, but as a lot of us know, you know, it's called the sunshine vitamin. The majority of it, over 80%, is synthesized in the skin upon exposure to sunlight, and specifically UVB rays. And on the side of the screen, you can kind of see this pathway. You know, vitamin D is actually synthesized from cholesterol in the skin. We get pre-vitamin D3, which is then activated in the liver and later in the kidney. So deficiency due to this limited sun exposure is a documented problem globally. I think it's estimated that 1 billion people globally are deficient in vitamin D, but it's also a documented problem in athletes. So let's spend a little bit of time about all of the things that can affect sun or UVB exposure and lead to issues with vitamin D status. So it can be as simple as things like lower light levels like we're experiencing today, and shorter, daylight hours. Can be due to latitude, so where you live relative to the equator. Sunscreen use, although sunscreen is really important for cancer prevention, sunscreen use really cuts down on the UVB exposure we get to our skin, and thus on the vitamin D production in our skin. The level of skin covering that one may, prefer to wear, lifestyle, so a desk job. A lot of us work 9 to 5 jobs, which is really the time that, during the middle of the day when we would be outside really getting the UVB exposure needed for vitamin D production. And even skin pigment. So studies have shown that higher levels of skin pigment can lead to requirements of 5 to 10 times the amount of vitamin D, or 5 to 10 times amount of vitamin D as skin with lower levels of pigment. So low vitamin D status is obviously an issue, and where we've seen kind of the biggest problems, and especially in an athletic population, has been the link between low vitamin D status and an increased risk for stress fractures, and in some studies even showing lower bone mineral density. On top of that, low vitamin D status is also associated with a higher incidence, increased severity, and increased length of respiratory infections. So while there's no direct evidence that vitamin D supplementation really impacts your physical performance, so it's not necessarily ergogenic, although there are a lot of studies currently looking into whether that could be true. What we're looking at really is whether or not low vitamin D status sidelines you or decreases the likelihood of you being able to train or participate in the sport of your choosing, and whether this is because of an injury, something like a stress fracture, or it's because you get sick more frequently. Both of these things can have an impact on your ability to do the sport you love. So for this reason, D3 seemed like a no-brainer to add into our baseline series. We use the active form of D3, or cholecalciferol. So there's another form of vitamin D called vitamin D2, which is ergocalciferol, which you'll see in some supplements, and you'll also find in mushrooms. Cholecalciferol is the much more active form. I think it takes, I forget what the exact number is, but close to 40% more vitamin D2 to get kind of the equivalent response that you would get from the D3 form. D3 is also the form, which I'll remind you, that our body naturally produces in our skin. So we've included 1,000 IUs of plant-based D3 from lichen. So most D3 is actually derived from lanolin, which is from sheep's wool. So is not something that vegan athletes would be able to take based on their diet. So we were happy to find a plant-based D3 that both our omnivorous and vegan consumers could benefit from. We also chose for all of our baseline series to go with an encapsulated product. So this product is as clean as you can get. It's just a vegetarian capsule, rice bran, and then the active ingredient. So there are no other ingredients. In things like tablets and soft gels, you have to include a lot of excipients and stabilizers in order to get the vitamin or the nutrient of interest into kind of that steady form. So capsules are a way to deliver this ingredient without including a lot of those otherwise unnecessary ingredients. So the next nutrient that I want to talk about is magnesium. So magnesium is involved in more than 300 metabolic reactions, and similar to vitamin D, it has a huge range of functions in the body. So things like nerve and muscle function, heart rhythm, blood pressure, immune function, bone integrity, calcium absorption, and even maintaining blood glucose levels. Studies have shown that about 60% of adults in the US are deficient. And magnesium deficiency has been documented in a wide range of athletes. So correcting magnesium deficiency in athletes has been shown to improve blood pressure, and that's blood pressure both before, during, and after exercise. And you can think of that as having, you know, a direct correlation to blood flow to working muscles, as well as muscle function. So interestingly, also magnesium is required for the activation of vitamin D in the liver and kidneys. So in that table I showed you before of how sunlight activates vitamin D in our skin, and then that vitamin D is later activated by in the liver and in the kidneys, both of those steps are magnesium dependent. And interestingly, what they've shown is that magnesium plus vitamin D supplementation is actually better at correcting vitamin D deficiency than supplementing with vitamin D alone. In other studies, they've shown that a higher intake of magnesium, either dietary, so from foods in your diet, or supplemental, actually reduces the risk of vitamin D deficiency and insufficiency. So really important to kind of think of these as synergistic. And often people that are having or have low levels of vitamin D may actually also be simultaneously low in magnesium, and assessing both is really, really important. So how can you increase magnesium just in your diet? You can look to increase foods like spinach and chard, so any dark leafy greens. Seeds are always a good option, but pumpkin seeds in particular are high in magnesium. Yogurt, almonds, avocados, beans, my personal favorite, dark chocolate, figs, and bananas. These are all things to eat more of. But sometimes whether, you know, because life gets in the way, we don't have enough time to include foods like this in our diet, you know, supplementation becomes necessary. And this is where our second product in our Gnarly Baseline series comes into play. So Gnarly Baseline magnesium citrate, it's 200 milligrams of magnesium per capsule for magnesium citrate. We chose to use magnesium citrate because it's highly bioavailable and well absorbed by the body. So magnesium in certain forms can actually act as an oxidant or as a laxative because it's not really well absorbed. And so choosing magnesium salts that are highly bioavailable is really important to make sure that you're actually getting the magnesium in your body and you're not then having gut distress. So magnesium citrate is one of the most highly bioavailable forms of magnesium, and that's the reason why we chose it. Similar to the vitamin D, this is also in a vegetarian capsule, so the product itself is vegan, and the only other ingredient beyond the magnesium citrate is rice bran. So the last product I'm going to talk about is actually a trio, or it's actually 4 different ingredients, but the 3 I'm going to talk about first are iron, B12, and folate. So iron is the functional component of hemoglobin and myoglobin, which are 2 proteins that deliver oxygen throughout the body. So hemoglobin basically takes oxygen from our lungs and distributes it throughout the body, and myoglobin is responsible for delivering oxygen to our muscles. B12 and folate support healthy red blood cells production, so also play a similar role to iron. So I want to talk a little bit how deficiency of any one of these 3 nutrients can lead to anemia, so different forms of anemia. So first, I'll talk about iron deficiency anemia. So healthy red blood cells really deliver oxygen to the body's tissues. And that's because in a healthy red blood cell, you have that protein hemoglobin. And in each heme, or part of that hemoglobin, so there are four different kind of proteins within the red blood cell, you have iron, and the iron basically is what holds on to the oxygen. So in iron deficiency anemia, when the body lacks iron, it makes less hemoglobin and fewer red blood cells. And so the blood delivers less oxygen to tissues that need it. In B12 or folate deficiency anemia, you still get anemia, so you get the same end result, but a B12 or a folate deficiency actually causes the body to produce abnormally large red blood cells that also don't function properly. So same result, but different cause. So iron deficiency is common in menstruating women, in vegans, in strict vegetarians, and endurance athletes. And you see an overlap of B12 deficiency in vegans and strict vegetarians. So definitely iron and B12 supplementation in this group is particularly important. Studies have shown that improving iron and B12 status increases work capacity, reduces heart rate and lactate concentration during exercise in those that are either low or deficient. So just to kind of prove the point that this is a significant issue, so there have been tons of studies showing iron deficiency being a problem in a wide range of athletes, but particularly in endurance athletes. So this study that's up on the screen right now showed that 87.5% of triathletes and 31% of runners were iron deficient. Iron deficiency anemia was found in 35% of distance runners, and iron deficiency in 50% of runners in the study that I just threw up. And in collegiate cross-country runners, anemia was found in 2% of females and 1% of males, but iron deficiency, so having low levels of iron, but not to the level of being anemic, was found in 33% of females and 3% of males. And then finally, 35% of female distance runners in this last study were found with anemia and 50% with iron deficiency. So these are all different populations of athletes, but all pretty staggering results showing how serious this issue can be. And it can get even more serious depending on where you fall kind of in these three categories. So low levels of iron can result from either increased iron loss, increased iron requirement, or decreased intake and malabsorption of iron. So increased iron loss is usually from some kind of bleeding somewhere else in the body. So could be a GI bleed, could be hemolysis, could be menstruation, regular blood donation. Elite athletes, I would say all athletes that sweat a lot, you lose iron through your sweat. Could be due to being on a drug like a blood thinner. If you're experiencing increased iron loss, you're obviously at risk for being low in iron. But then if you put on top of that an increased iron requirement because you're a female of childbearing age or you're pregnant, that puts you into a whole nother category. And then if you take decreased intake and malabsorption and put it on top of that, then we start talking about really being in a very high risk group. So vegetarians and vegans because of diet choices, even athletes that might not be on a balanced diet or have issues with, energy deficiency. So we see in the red S syndrome, people not taking in enough calories. These groups are going to see less iron in their diet, which is another concern. Consumption of high levels of tea and coffee, or even if you're taking an iron supplement, but you're taking it in a multivitamin that also contains calcium, those things can really inhibit your ability to absorb the iron in your diet and can also lead to an issue. So if you fall in any two of these categories, you're at high risk for iron deficiency. If you fall in three categories, you're at very high risk. So I would say that if you fall into a high risk or very high risk category, definitely see a primary care physician. Look to be tested for iron. Iron testing can be pretty complicated, but you should look for a complete blood panel. You should get your ferritin levels tested. You should get your transferrin levels tested, and also your transferrin saturation. And also look to work with a dietitian that can help you figure out ways that you can add more iron into your diet. Speaking of that, dietary sources of iron include things like organ meats, meat, shellfish, fish, eggs, Fortified cereal, which is interesting because fortified cereal also contains usually calcium in it, which, as I mentioned, can inhibit iron absorption. So that can be an issue. But things like tofu, beans, seeds, dark leafy greens, and dried fruit can also be, non-animal sourced or non-animal sources of iron in your diet. For B12, a lot of the sources are the same as far as animal sources of B12, organ meats, meat, shellfish, fish, eggs, dairy. Fortified cereal, again, fortified non-dairy milk is a good source of B12, tempeh, so any fermented soy products are going to be good sources, nutritional yeast, nori seaweed, and chlorella. So B12 is going to be a little bit harder to get for vegans and vegetarians maybe than iron will be. So definitely consider supplementation if you're on one of those diets. So Gnarly Baseline Iron kind of takes all of this into consideration. We've included 25 milligrams of iron bisglycinate, which is a highly bioavailable form of non-heme iron. Iron bisglycinate is also relatively, because of that bioavailability, relatively easy on the stomach. Along with that, 15 milligrams of vitamin C, which has been shown to improve iron absorption. 50 micrograms of methylcobalamin, which is the active form of B12. And then 400 micrograms of the methylated form of folate, which is the form you see naturally occurring in food. So all of these nutrients together really help support kind of blood building in athletes and are going to be really important to potentially supplement with if you fall into one of those groups. But as I mentioned, I would really consider getting tested by your primary care physician and then working with a dietitian to determine if, incorporating a supplement like Iron Plus is the right choice for you. Okay, thank you. That is kind of the summary of the first 3 Baseline series products that we're going to be releasing in January. And I'm happy to take any questions you have on them. And if you have other questions on collagen that you didn't get to ask previously, I can answer those as well. Eli? All right, I'm gonna stop.
I'm here, Shannon.
Okay, I was like, he's gone.
I was typing a question to everyone, reminding them. So we have 2 questions that have been submitted so far. So first of them was from someone who had to take off already, but they're going to watch the rest of your presentation. And so they wanted you to answer this question. When is it most beneficial to take the baseline supplements? So maybe you approach that from each product. Yeah, so it really depends on the product. So for vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. So any fat-soluble nutrients are always better absorbed when you take them with food. Just as a little aside, the same thing's true with something like curcumin or turmeric, which is also fat-soluble. So vitamin D should be taken with food. Iron, because of some of those interactions with other nutrients, with things like calcium or things like phytates that you find in certain plants, and those decreasing the absorption of iron, iron is actually better taken without food. And magnesium, as far as I know, there shouldn't necessarily be an impact of any foods on its absorption. So I'm not sure if there's a better time to take magnesium. Great. This individual asked that maybe they missed it, but would you recommend a doctor test their vitamin D levels before taking a supplement? Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd say a couple things. It's always a good idea to have, if you have an annual blood panel, to have your vitamin D tested. I'd say that's good to determine if you're vitamin D deficient,
and if you need to take higher levels of vitamin D. So usually if you're vitamin D deficient, you're going to be taking way more than 1,000 IUs to deal with that deficiency. But it's definitely always good to be tested. When you're tested, you're going to be looking for that 25 hydroxy vitamin D, which is kind of down in that pathway of vitamin D metabolism that I showed you. For most people, I'd say if you can get enough sunlight during the spring and summer months, you may not even need to supplement with vitamin D. But it's really during the winter months when all of those compounding factors, wearing more clothes because it's cold outside, less sunlight, fewer daylight hours, it really makes it pretty hard to get enough vitamin D during the winter. And therefore adding in a low level supplement of 1,000 IUs to potentially 2,000 IUs, depending on the amount you're able to get out, is not a bad idea.
Good. Someone, Aiden actually asked specifically if you would mind sharing the academic papers that you referenced.
For sure.
There's probably a lot, so I don't know if you want to share those through the email that we send out, Shannon, tomorrow, or if you would prefer to have, people who are interested in diving that deep to email you specifically. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I can either, I can send out a list of references for everyone. And then if sometimes a list of references might not mean that you can get the paper. So I'm also happy to share PDFs of the actual papers. If you want to reach out to me, you can just email me at Shannon@GoGnarly. And I can send you, the papers that interest you, because a lot of them are usually behind a paywall. Some of them you can get nowadays, but some are a little harder.
Awesome. We're at the hour mark here. Any other questions that anybody wants to ask? Oh, yeah. Great. This is a good question, Shannon. Why didn't Gnarly go with a multivitamin instead of individual vitamin supplements?
It is a great question. For a couple of reasons. So one, if you're not familiar with our Gnarly Performance Greens, we kind of call it a whole food multivitamin. It hits a lot of the bases as far as kind of an overall product that covers mineral and vitamin needs. The other reason is because, so one, things like iron are inhibited by the presence of other minerals like calcium. Two, multivitamins are usually a catch-all, and it's hard to specifically, I'd say, like hit both a high vitamin D level and a high calcium level and the right amount of iron. You'll usually see lower to moderate levels of everything, as opposed to getting the right and effective doses of particular nutrients. And it's just an easier way to pick and choose the right supplement for you, deciding what everyone should have. So I don't think a multivitamin is a bad idea, but I definitely don't think it's necessary for everybody. And having singular products helps us kind of cover more bases for a larger amount of people.
Good. So currently Gnarly Collagen Pro is available. And in fact, post this clinic, tomorrow we'll be sending out an email that has a recording of this clinic so you can watch it again and again. And you'll also get a free gift from Gnarly, as well as a discount to try Gnarly Collagen Pro specifically. But Shannon, when will the Baseline series be available?
So we should be launching that in January. I'd say early to mid-January. We'll have those products available.
Great. Well, that's all the other questions. The only other comment was people expressing gratitude for the session, Shannon. So thanks a ton for making it happen.
Yeah, thanks for all the questions, guys. It was super helpful. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out and email me. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. It's what I love. So yeah, shoot me a note.
Everybody, thanks for joining us. Join us in the other clinics in the next coming weeks. Have a great, great day. We'll see you soon.